Well, I think it's time for some more Bleach Soul Resonance. You guys think it's time for some more Bleach Soul Resonance? I think it's time for some more Bleach Soul Resonance. And we're going to be doing a roundup of a few things because obviously, you know, I put out the guide, which everyone really showed out for. They wanted to see the showcase. I put out some, you know, predictive things when it comes to rerunning banners and people were out there. So I really appreciate that. So I figure we're just going to cool down. We're going to bring it back, do a few more things that are sort of small and just talk about them. I believe Giku says he was on vacation in one of his last videos, so I believe he's posting this from vacation. Maybe some stuff he's not been able to get to in video. I don't know if he pre-recorded both of these talking points, but we're gonna go over them because, you know, it's fun to go over who could be coming, as well as we're going to talk about my account and where it is. Again, I have not spent a dime on my account, so if you're a free-to-play player, it's something to aspire to. If you see my account, you're like, man, that account's pretty good, just know that you could have that account. You know what I mean? This is a free-to-play account. Is a free-to-play channel for the most part. The only thing I've ever really spent on is in Dokkan. I would buy the subscription, and I haven't bought that in like 5 months. And so, you know, that's something that is even funnier, is that even in my main game, Dokkan Battle, I'm not even paying for the subscription anymore. But while I wait for Anniversary. But Bleach Soul Resonance genuinely needs to be studied. Everything pointed to the game failing, yet here it is, being loved by everyone, and for once doing everything right and listening to the players. It's such a weird conundrum, because there are so many things wrong, but they're still doing so good. I'm just happy Bleach is getting some love, and it seems we might have GrImmjow, Kenpachi, Nalel as back-to-back releases, which is very hype. So I actually do want to talk about some things, very first off, that I think are maybe wrong in the game. Maybe I would like change. So one they did change recently, and so I am not going to talk about this in too much detail, is they gave us a rate up on the stamp quarter banner. And yes, you can see I changed my rate up, and I guess this will be a reveal, but I did get the Gin core stamp. For some people who check the community post, they already know that. 34,000. Gin core stamp is right here. Pretty good. So what are some things that I would say are like a little bit of hassles in Bleach Soul Resonance? In Chaos Zero Nightmare, they did this very early. Raising characters was really expensive, and it became a sort of bottleneck that was a little untenable. It was really hard to overcome. So if I say ascend here, 45,000, it's like, oh, that's not too bad, 45,000. But when you raise something like a core stamp here, and I wish I could easily sort of show this, but we don't have that much, you know, because we don't have I don't have many stamps that are at like 15 or something. You know, this is a big sink right here. And to raise a core stamp to level 30, you have to pay 300 of that core stamp, that ectoplasm material, like at the back end. So your final push is essentially going to completely drain you of all of your ectoplasm, which means you need to spend essentially, because you're not, if you're a free-to-play player like me, you don't spend, you know, stamina or jade rather on stamina. You need to spend that much. This was my last day of using all of my stamina for that day. I spent it down and went to 0 stamina getting my stamp ectoplasm back. And then after that, I spent all of that bonus time going down to 0 and getting my con back. And then after that, I went through more bonus time, and we're essentially on like day 2.5 or whatever, you know, because I count like, you know, going to sleep, waking up, having stamina, and then also doing my dailies, getting the 60 for the free stamina, and, you know, trying to pump my character XP again. It's essentially led to this bottleneck that I don't really think needs to exist at the level it does, because you should say, well, okay, if you don't have those bottlenecks, then all people will do is farm Realm of Mutation gear, right? I think we could still have Realm of Mutation gear farms without it being this dire, because, like, for instance, if I go to stamp here, I actually had a new piece that was pretty good, I think, very recently. Was it this one? Yeah, this one's pretty good. Alongside that, I have something like this really good piece that I had gotten before. This is like a temporary piece. I actually think I will unlock that. But you could see that, like, it's not like a lot of things are getting locked here, right? And chief among those, like, this is fine. I could see myself using this, but even that's not particularly great because it's not crit rate piece, right? So it's a lot of farming these areas. But when you actually think about it, we aren't really skipping this farm in any conceivable way, because we still do need to roll the gear. And so I think having less of the resources be dictated by the actual, what is it, the materials here. So things like ectoplasm and things like your total con level would be nice. Either that, or I would like characters to cost less XP, something to reduce how much stamina you need to actually spend on that, because by the time you're done raising a character, you spend a lot of like stamina, right? So I would like that. Either that, or they should introduce something that a lot of these games have, which is a shop system. So let's say you play out this character, you know, you finish out all the events. I mean, you're literally doing, you know, the events for these characters, right? You know, you're doing all this stuff. You should be able to go into a shop, kind of like you did with Aizen. It should be with every single character. They should do this with all of them. Kind of like with Aizen, where the shop attached to the character gives you enough materials to sort of like at least raise them to like 70. I think 70 is like a fair one, because once you get to 80, once you get to 90 especially, it gets really dicey. Like you start spending, you know, 3 days just recovering what you spent to get Gin to 90, right? So that is one. But yeah, back to back, it was very hype. So there's one if I'm going to give it one. Other than that, I don't know. It's what happens when you make a fun game, right? The long and short of it is Bleach Soul Resonance is a fun game to press buttons in. If you make a game that is just fun to play, you can actually afford to have big mistakes come up. You know, Dokkan is fun to play for me, by and large, but it definitely does have a window that sort of closes around the, what would I say, a week and a half after a character. Whereas with Gin here, I've been having a lot of fun just doing dailies and challenges for the character, right? Like, that's what happens when you have a gear system. That's what happens when you have leaderboards, and, you know, even when in, like, because, okay, so I made a video talking about this, but like Lurking Grounds, where am I at now? So in Void of Destruction, or Form of Destruction, I'm at 10%. What am I at here? I'm top 50, free to play. Completely free to play, I'm top 50. Like, that is fun, you know? And what is that? That comes down to like having things like what is it? That comes down to having things like gear systems where you actually do need to sort of know how to build these characters. You do need to know how to put your resources into certain things. You do need to know how to get the most out of your free-to-play account, right? It's fun to have things like that. And a game like Dokkan doesn't really. So after a week and a half, once the glow sort of wears off from the character release, you kind of are just done with Dokkan until they release the next thing. And that's why I don't really mind when Dokkan releases hard fights, because what else are you going to do in the game? You know? It's not like you're... I've always said they need to add something grindable to Dokkan, because right now it wears off too fast. But yeah, that's why a game like Bleach Soul Resonance, a game like Dragon Ball Legends, let's give Dragon Ball Legends its credit. That's why people can play that game every day if they want to, because PvP inherently is something to work towards. You know, even though Bleach Soul Resonance isn't a PvP game, I can go on and be like, hey, I'm top 50 versus everybody. Next thing, the most likely next 3 releases are GrImmjow, Nellel, and Kenpachi. GrImmjow has all his assets ready. Nellel has a model, is in the next chapter, and I've never known how to say this guy's name in my entire life, but it's like Nnoitora. What is his name? The praying mantis Adankar, who is super cool looking. I was kind of hoping that we'd get this character sooner rather than later. I know most people probably don't consider him like particularly cool, and let me bring him up actually. People probably don't consider this guy like, oh my god, he's so cool, but I kind of do. Like, he has a sick weapon. He has an eye patch. He fights Kenpachi. Like, I think this guy's sick. I would actually love to get this guy in game sooner rather than later. But yeah, it seems like we're going to be waiting a little bit longer before we get anything like that. That's kind of sad to me. I definitely was hoping we got him as a sort of like a low hype character, right? As sort of like a, you know, not to the level of Gin. Gin's more hyped than him, but as sort of a low hype character, like between something like Nellel and Kenpachi, but looks like we'll be waiting for that. Kenpachi's had gameplay for a while and has a lot of assets ready. This might be an exciting 9 weeks for BSR. I mean, yeah, they like so in 9 weeks, where will we have been? Like, so it's a month and a half, essentially, a month and a little bit. Like, we've got, well, a little bit under a month and a half, so like a month and some change. We've done 2 months already. That'd probably be, oh my god, we'd fall right before half anniversary or something like that. That's when we can talk about getting like Vasta Lord Ichigo. That's when we could talk about getting, you know, Captain Commander or something. Like, we're sort of on pace. I would definitely expect to see these 3 characters, then maybe like a Soifon or something like that, like a lower hype captain. Not that Soifon isn't hype at all. I think Soifon is hype, but Soifon, Mayuri, something like that, and then we could go into like half anniversary, which would be really sick. But I think these are 3 great picks, right? Like, Nell, I would consider this hype for people, right? Like, especially my GOAT Kenpachi. Kenpachi probably coming on like week 9 or whatever, you know, week 7, week 6. Oh my god, sit. Yeah. Is sad for me because while I do like GrImmjow and Nell, Kenpachi is the character that when the game launched, I was like, I want this character. So this is like the big one I've been waiting for. But yeah, we'll have to see where that lines up. And I guess that's the information for this week. It's like I said, this is more of an information video. We're kind of chilling. We're in the relaxed part of the celebration where we're sort of just logging on, doing our quests. Gin has overtaken Aizen purely because of Aizen not having his core stamp, which is kind of crazy to imagine that, you know, my GOAT here is now one of my top powered characters behind Yoruichi, who by comparison has a ton of upside. I mean, Ascension 5 on this core stamp means that I don't want to say that if he had dupes in his core stamp, he'd be like, you know, 40,000, but his gear is good enough that I think we'd be I think we might hit it, because she's at 40,000. She's almost at 40,000, and her gear is non-level 30. It's not all optimal, if I'm honest. This gear's not great. This piece is fine. This piece is terrible. So, you know, it is sort of interesting to think that I'm like hiding a 40 bomb because this character is juiced, man. I feel like my stats are really good. My stats are really good on this character. But yeah, next thing I'll be working on, I think because GrImmjow is what does this character need? I think because GrImmjow is next, I might consider doing Komomura finally. Komomura definitely needs help. His gear is awful. I did get his weapon, which is pretty cool, right? His weapon's pretty cool. But as far as his stats, as far as his actual build, he's pretty terrible. I have never put any work into this character at all. He doesn't even have really leveled up gear. So maybe that. Rangiku is the obvious one. Prior to that, we're waiting for her to be released at some point, maybe next week with Attach, but we'll sort of see. I do like the idea of continuing to raise my Tosin. This character has been very reliable for me, and I think that having him be under-kitted while I sort of get other characters is definitely taking a toll, because I do think he's strong enough to warrant ascending. Also, being that he doesn't need much, like, Kisuke Yodohara probably won't ever leave level 70 until I'm like so flowing in materials that I think it's worth it. But he does all of his job without it. And I think in the same way, Kaname Tosin will do the same, where I just need to actually get his gear online, which is much less costly than some other ventures in this game. I think raising the gear, for example, feels like way less bad than raising core stamps, feels way less bad than doing all the like character XP and stuff like that. So it might be Tosin. We'll have to see, because currently Geen is not having any problems just doing it by himself. But yeah, let's call it for now. Let's not like yap too much more. I hope that, you know, this has been a fun little video to break down one of the bigger issues I think that you guys can relate to, which is the stamina woes. So yeah, with all being said, I've been Lone. Like, if you like the video, subscribe to the club. We all go make it, and this Bleach game is kind of good. Peace.